We have one last session, panel with three of my closest friends from Metro Detroit, and we're going to talk about leadership and all that good sort of thing in our space. But as people are kind of cycling in here, you'll notice on the tables and desks here that there's a yellow form. It's a feedback form. We take everybody's feedback super seriously. We've made a bunch of changes over the years based on feedback from the audience. So fill it out, give it to one of the blue shirts. They'll trade you for a ticket, which will go into a fishbowl, and hopefully you win something. I think we had the same person win all 3 prizes last year, so maybe you could be that lucky one this time. Okay, so last session of the day, we're having a panel about how data leaders think, turning AI projects from curiosity to actual real deployments. My name is Scott Smith. I work for WIT. Been here all day, and again, happy to see everybody. But I want to introduce our 3 panelists, and I'll have them come up individually here. So first, Brandel Kremer. She's the Director of Global Data at Mars Corporation, to my immediate left. And second, Apurva Wadodkar, the Senior Director, Head of Data and AI at TI Automotive. And last but not least, Sudha Kumar, Technology Strategist from Microsoft. All right, so basically, I'm going to moderate the panel. I'm going to ask some questions, got some great answers. If anybody's dying to ask a question as we're going, just raise your hand. We'll take the question. We're going to try to leave questions for the end of the session if possible, but if you just, hey, I know you said that, and I really want to know right now, just raise your hand and I'll try to grab you. All right? Okay, so, every organization in today's day and age kind of has a moment, some inflection point of where AI turned from a curious set of projects, maybe a pilot or two, something that we should explore. Maybe now we should actually start doing it. So let's go around. What was that moment in your respective organizations where that happened? Was it a person or a project? And how did that spark turn into a strategy? Brandel?
Yeah, so I'll start. So ours wasn't necessarily a moment that sparked into an AI strategy or a journey. It was actually the opposite. So when we saw ChatGPT, we saw AI, we saw put all your data out there, my initial response was risk, no. So our initial strategy was actually, how do we block AI? How do we stop it? How do we contain it? How do we protect our company? You mentioned I work for the Mars Corporation. So we are Snickers, M&Ms, Pringles, Pop-Tarts. Our assets are our data, and we have to protect our data. So for us, it was the opposite. It was trying to stop and prevent it. The catalyst that shifted that, and now I'm on stage talking about AI, was actually that year, the theme of our company was innovation at the core. And so us coming right out with no to a big innovation idea didn't go against what we were theming that year, right? Didn't go with our shirts that said innovation at core. And so it was more internal politics that actually shifted us to opening up AI. And then we partnered with Microsoft aggressively to release a very limited pilot of Copilot, and that's how we got into the AI realm.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome. How about your organization, Apurva?
I just love this. I think there are 2 extremes which kicks off AI. One is fear or over-enthusiasm, isn't it? Almost magical. So I was on the other spectrum, my company, when we were starting. But I want to make a comment on, your catalyst piece. Usually, we in technology or IT, whatever you call your department, are the ones who are most prone to finding new technologies, vetting it, seeing if it belongs in our ecosystem. So to me, it has always been IT leader who has kicked off this has been that catalyst, right? However, it doesn't become strategy until you bring in your business into the mix. And for me, it has started usually with educating them. Back in 2019, when this was my first time I was starting an AI department, and there was this aura of throw whatever at AI and it's gonna be magical, right? How many people have gone through that, right? And so part of my job was to ground their feet into reality and explain to them what it can do and what it cannot do, right? And how to think AI. But that education to me is so critical to patch that new technology to your strategy, and that's how the trigger happens.
All right.
Awesome. I totally resonate with what both Brandel said and Apurva said, because I sit in Microsoft and that I had the vantage point to see how businesses reacted to AI, and I really think that when ChatGPT came unannounced totally, no product announcements, no product launches, and it just came out as a website and everybody actually went and did something and they talked to AI and they talked back and everybody was like, oh God, this is something real and we have to do something about it. So from Microsoft standpoint, like we were inundated with AI briefings, like the CEOs, the CTOs, you name it, industrial leaders, they came and they wanted, and they were not even Microsoft customers. Our customer base suddenly grew like crazy. And everybody wanted to know what this AI is all about and how they can implement it or be the front row seat to take it to the next step. And there were organizations like Mars, like where they wanted to like, oh God, this is not right for us. There's so much regulation, security, data, compliance. All of that were top of mind, but still that excitement of like, okay, I have to do something with this was totally overwhelming. And when we did these briefings, I think the most used term was like about grounding, right? Like your data is your data, and we don't train your models with your data. That was the key phrase that probably we all have been like a slogan repeating in Microsoft. And the top use cases were like productivity type of use cases, because the models were bringing like content generation, reasoning a little bit, and summarization and sentiment analysis. So it was more of like the productivity was the angle, and the contact center transformations were the top use cases that we were like advocating customers like, okay, this is where you can try in a safe space and you can move on. And it was more like the spark to the strategy. I would say like from my side, like what I saw was the ISVs were the early adopters because they wanted to integrate it in their product and they wanted to make a differentiation, how their product looked in the market. And top companies like financial institutions, the regulatory constraints were there. They were laggards. They took time. They had to analyze how this impacts their organization and move forward. But it still was a surreal moment, to be honest. Yeah.
No, I'll bet.
Yeah.
They had a different problem, to have their customers trust.
Yes.
Right. That was top of the.
That was the thing. The grounding was the major question. Yeah. How do you ground your data, and how I know that the data is not going to go anywhere? So. Yep.
Awesome. So, strategy is kind of one thing. I think every organization kind of comes up with a strategy in a different way at a different time. So, knowing where to actually start your AI journey as an organization is another topic altogether. So, once your organization aligned on AI, Apurva, how did you identify and prioritize use cases? What made something rise to the top versus not get on the list at all?
Right. I don't think of AI as something different from my regular portfolio, and so I would plan for it just like any other portfolio you would plan in the beginning of the year. Now, there are two things I'm going to give little gifts to you that I like to follow all the time, especially with AI. The thing with AI is it has a lot of different flavors. There's no one AI, one thing that's AI, right? There's so many categories of it. And there are categories which, like predictive analytics, which is a hypothesis testing. Hypothesis testing is basically tell me if data you are confirming what I think it is. And data may not give you that story. And so there are high chances of failure. I won't call it failure, but not productionizing the predictive sort of analytics, predictive AI. And then there is another AI, which is Gen AI. High chances you're going to put something in production because I put it in a software category, right? And so I want my portfolio to be balanced. I don't want all failure type of, all predictive ones where, oh, nothing came out the whole year. So that's what number one intuition while picking the use cases. Second intuition is, and I strive to do that. I'm not quite there yet, but generally our instinct is, okay, we have this whatever number of use cases that are coming our way. Which ones have best chances of success? We pick that. Obviously, we all want to be successful. We want to see it go through. So we sort of cast a very wide net. And what that happens is, a little bit impact happens everywhere, which is not enough impact to move the needle of your organization. What instead I like to do is, focus on few processes or domains and say, okay, I'm going to find everything I can do in these domains to lift it up. So instead of this much value creation, now you're creating this much value creation, which now creates momentum. So this year at TI Automotive, my company, we are a manufacturing company, and biggest problem, one of the big problems is scrap. And so we are focusing our energies this year on scrap reduction. So there are a bunch of projects, like nicely bundled up. So we'll see a little impact in that space. So that's one, and then other one is employee. You never want to lose out on your employee morale and all that. So we are working on unified chatbot that's going to be able to give little things to employees, like what do my policies look like, or hey, what are my approvals today? Let me just, productivity hacks, and just giving information on fingertips. So time to getting to information, we're trying to reduce.
Very cool.
Awesome.
So Brandel, when you and I first met a few months ago, you had some great stories of really cool ideas that maybe didn't work out so well in production. Why don't you share a couple?
Yeah, so everyone always talks about all the success stories with AI. It's very rare that you hear about case studies where AI didn't go so well or didn't prove to be worth the investment. And so one of the ones that I shared with Scott was we had a project where on paper, it looked amazing. The ROI was there, the business case was there, and we had full business alignment. We were going to use machine learning to take our historical packaging data. So if you imagine a Pringles package, a Pop-Tarts package, right? How the different sizes and shapes and colors and nutritional labeling and all that it comes in. We're going to use all that data with machine learning and user inputs to help predict what the next package should be for our products, what it should look like, what should be on the package. We partnered with a very flashy vendor. That's my way of saying we'll just stick with flashy.
Flash is good.
We'll just stick with flashy. A very flashy vendor that promised us the world. And throughout the entire process, throughout all the iterations, they showed us exactly what we wanted to see, right? The beautiful software, the beautiful buttons, everything working as designed. You ask a question, you get the answer you want. It was in pressure testing where we really started asking questions. We started to poke holes in the software. And so the example I shared specifically with Scott was, I ask a question about dragon fruit Pringles, and it comes back and tells me that that's a diet food. Well, if Pringles was a diet food, we'd all had it for lunch. It's not a diet food. So it's taking dragon fruit, which is seen as a healthy, diet-ishy type food, and then it's combining it with Pringles and coming up with a made-up answer. So it's hallucinating to the extreme. And so that's where, through pressure testing, we started to poke more and more holes, only to find out that this vendor didn't actually use machine learning. They didn't actually train the data set. They just put in a lot of hard-coded guardrails and a lot of pre-programmed answers. So throughout the demo, as we asked a question, we got the answer we wanted. Whether or not it came through AI, we still got the answer we wanted. And so at the end, we ended up pulling the product completely off the shelves. And so we didn't end up deploying it because having to go back and train the model when we thought the last 6 months it was being trained meant that we were automatically adding another 6 to 9 months, plus the trust at this point was broken, right? And so the lessons learned for us was, yes, you can see all the flashy software. We've all been in the demos of the software, but you need to get your hands on at least the bits and pieces that are being demoed as they're being rolled out so you can poke the holes. And the phrase I like to use the most is negative testing. And it's like, test it for the wrong answers. Don't put in the right answers, because if you put in the right answers, you're going to get the right answers. Put in the wrong answers and see if you get the right answers.
Absolutely.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
So Sudha, you have obviously probably the most unique perspective on the stage here because you work with so many different customers. Obviously there's patterns across industries, and there's probably a lot of automotive folks in the room. So what are some of the patterns that you've seen in automotive? Things that are compelling, things that are working right now?
Awesome. Definitely, Scott. And some of the use cases that Apurva mentioned are also some of the patterns we are seeing as well. Historically, I think a lot of industrial revolutions have happened with automotive, so it is not new for AI. I believe you guys are doing autonomous cars, you are doing connected factories and all of those things. So AI is definitely not anything new that you cannot crack with manufacturing, but from Microsoft, what we do is we look at customers and see like what are the top use cases they are experimenting, and we also bring a point of view for that vertical, how the technology can be used for that particular industry. And we have about 11 to 12 industries that we give a point of view on the use cases. If you look at the use cases, like the first and foremost one is intelligent factories, basically. Like basically look at how do you unify your factory, facility, and operational data first, because that is important for you all. And then from there, you run AI agents and look at like production runs and be proactive on how the production system works, so you can avoid some failures, right? And then the data gives you a great foundation for your RCAs, which is important when you have a production failure, that all of you can see the same data that is sitting on top of it. And then you also can really bring all your stakeholders to look at production insights together, mean it like supply chain, finance, different parts of your org to look at that production insights through agents and co-pilots. So that's the intelligent factories. And then the second foremost important use case is predictive maintenance and asset health. And I think that has been like very prevalent. I mean, probably a lot of the manufacturing companies are already doing that. I mean, that's been the early thing. But with technology, you can bring real-time dashboards that you can see real-time, and it's becoming more and more sophisticated these days. The third thing is the connected worker, which is a very important use case, because like if you look at engineers, operators, even your customer service, getting access to the data through LLMs is very, very, it's transformational with your co-pilots or chatbots or even sophisticated agents on top of it, because you can query that real time with your natural language. And more we see that training of new employee with agents, basically getting the intelligence onto the agents, and they can easily onboard an employee, which is a big thing. So that is a big transformational thing we are seeing as well. And getting all your digital product development, that's another important use case, because that's like, how do you expedite your product development using AI, like R&D cycles, reducing with CAD models, augmenting with AI, or even creating your part design with AI, and looking at your production runs, like what Apurva was saying, hey, I want to reduce scrap, right? How do you calibrate a production run that will reduce your scrap, or in fact, like material waste, right? Like how do you reduce material waste? That way your cost of the parts labor, like that cost is reduced, right? So those are some of the things. And of course, AI-assisted coding is something that very prevalent. It's not just with manufacturing, with all the industry verticals, but it also speeds up your product development process as well. But again, I've just scratched the surface. There's tons more. There's so many customer stories that we have that we can do. But that's kind of where we are.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I think AI-assisted coding has changed the landscape completely.
Yeah.
We are overhauling and changing our interview process. Like,
Yeah.
why would you ask somebody to remember syntax
Yeah.
when, the intelligent part really in coding is the logic, which takes 30 minutes.
Yep.
And then you are refactoring your code for the rest of the, whatever, 3 weeks you're sitting and doing it. What a value add.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right. Let's move on to governance. That's always a topic around all this. And governance obviously is super important across everything that we do as data leaders. But everybody agrees that we need to do it. Not everybody agrees on how we do it or what we're doing. How have you approached building a governance model at TI?
Yeah, so I'll give you my view, and this is what I like to bring in every company I go to. Governance is a very scary word. People get scared when you say governance in town. So let's change the word governance to something else, right? I like to call it AI, Center of Excellence, or something of that sort, right? So it's not that scary. And you can use words like enablement, AI enablement, make it positive. Governance has a big taboo with it, so it's a little thing, but can change the mindset quite drastically. So there are really, I like to divide the governance into two parts. One is your centralized governance, which I call it AI's Center of Excellence. And there are 4 sort of pillars in it. There's legal, there is privacy, security, and architecture. And as you can imagine, these folks are not getting into nitty-gritty of your, what the use case is or what value are you bringing. That's not their job. Their job is standardization. Couple of things that this COE should do is take a full inventory of any AI project that's going on in the company. And sometimes you don't have that many, data science groups that are doing it. But back in Autodesk, there were like 150 teams doing different AI projects. Now the scale is crazy there. And so you want to know, if your customer asks you, what are you doing with my data regarding AI? And you will get that question at some point of time. You need an answer. And it won't happen if you are running blind on, oh my God, what projects are even going on in the company. So have a repository that's going to save you someday. And then commissioning the sort of subscriptions or what you need to do the AI. You don't want a variety of, somebody is using some vector database, somebody using some other. It needs to be standard. So that's what the central architecture team would do is, hey, use this standard architecture to do whatever you are doing, right? And then if there are any repetitive things, this team is doing the same thing as this team, connect them together, right? So we are saving a bunch of time. So that's the job of really the central team. And privacy and legal, I don't even have to say anything about it. You know why that is important. And then second piece of governance is the data science pods themselves, the engineering pods who are creating the model. Their job is to make sure no biases come into their testing data set. Nobody else in the company is going to be responsible but that pod of people. No biases. How are you going to explain the model to whoever is using it, right? That's your job, not the center of excellence, right? And if there is no explainability, there's not going to be no adoption, so it's on you, right? And then finally, what are the parameters that suggest this is a successful model? What is that? Is it accuracy? Is it recall? What is it? That also needs to be defined. It's all part of governance, but again, it's two different levels of teams who are responsible for executing this.
Okay. So I guess in the spirit of different companies doing things differently, Brandel, what would you say in your organization are the top, I'll say, non-negotiables in terms of governance?
Yeah, so Apurva did a great job of talking just generally, like what is her governance framework, what's their strategy. I think for me, my two non-negotiables come down to tangible assets. And the first one is data dictionary. We've all heard it. We've even seen it. I think Best Buy was even talking about it if you were in their session, right? And so it's cataloging your data, but not just in terms of what data do I have available to me, but how am I using that data? What is the security of that data? What is the risk of that data? Who has access to that data? So it's taking not just your, what does this word mean, right? And it's framing it more in terms of AI. What is this data and how is it being used? And so with every AI model that's deployed, your first question should be, where's my dictionary or my appendix or my table of contents or whatever you want to frame it, but to get that as an asset. So that's a tangible asset that you're getting after the model is ready or before the model is ready to be deployed. The other big one, and you heard this from my lessons learned, it's model transparency. How is the model developing the logic? How is it getting the answers? Where is it getting the answers from? How did you test the answers? Apurva talked a little bit about bias and drift and that kind of stuff, right? So how are we managing that? That's where we need that model transparency. So I look at that as another actual tangible asset. I want to see a document, a note card, a business card, a resume, a CV that tells me this is my model, here's where the data is coming, here's where the data is going, and here's the logic behind the decision making that's happening, and here's the guardrails around those decisions. And it's written just like, you know, a document literally stating a recipe, a book, a policy, procedure on that model itself. Not what the AI tool can do, not what the AI tool can do for your company, but the actual model inside of the AI tool. So those would be my two non-negotiables before any deployment of AI is making sure that you have both of those business cards ready before you're deploying the model.
Okay.
I love that. I'm so going to steal it.
Absolutely.
So what about responsibility and responsible frameworks in AI? What's Microsoft's kind of pitch and reality around that?
Yeah, that's a very important and broad topic, but I'll try my best to answer that. Microsoft is framing this responsible AI framework on 6 principles, basically. One is fairness, reliability, inclusiveness, transparency, privacy, and accountability. And we have an Office of Responsible AI that actually operationalizes these principles. I mean, when we hear about responsible AI, we always think it's just a policy document and nothing happens after that, but it's really not the case. This Office of RAI, we call, is actually operationalizing how our design, build, and deployment of AI services happen within Microsoft, and also they get integrated with our engineering and work processes as well. So if you look at, like, you know, what is the customer getting, like for Brandel's point, like, hey, I want to see how this model works, right? Like, how does this really give me this answer? The governance is actually baked in, like with all the AI products that we ship, like for instance, Copilot, Azure OpenAI models, whatever you name it, like you look at Foundry, so many models are released. Because all of this is pressure tested with these principles, and we are also looking at red team testing, stress testing, risk testing, all of that happens when the product comes to the market. The second thing is we are giving the customers the tools that is needed for them to do it, like, because we don't want it to be like a theory that they cannot execute, right? Like Brandel asked, like, hey, how do I know what this is doing, what model is doing? Like, we have this transparency notes that you can see, like how Copilot actually gives you this response. And you look at RAI Toolbox, where we give you open source models, open source materials like software that you can actually implement to get your AI models to be compliant with RAI, for instance. And red team tool testing, Azure Content Services, all of this together helps the customer to be RAI or governed for their AI production. And then the third thing is human accountability, right? Like, if you look at Microsoft, we advocate that there should be a human who is responsible for making sure that their AI projects are governed, right? Like, that is a human accountability. And all of our products are also bringing, like, okay, this is generated by AI. So you need to ensure that, okay, this is a human who is saying that I know that I've read this and I'm drafting an email, and I know that this email is drafted by AI, but I looked at it. So there is an alert coming up, so saying that this is human AI generated, but I certified that this is going away to my customer or whoever that may be. But if you look at like where the customers are, the governance maturity is very low, because like every customer wants to be fast in this AI journey. They want to develop something, they want to deploy to production, but they don't understand that it's not like a SaaS model that we are getting like, oh, there is a model, I'm getting some responses, but there are some inherent risks that are coming downstream. You're just using the model, so there is going to be a maturity model on like how do I do all these RAI practices before I ship something off. So that is one thing, and the second is the post-deployment, right? Like the drift and all the other things that Apurva was talking about. People don't measure it after post-deployment. They just think that everything works well and it just ships away. So the message is clear, RAI is super important. If you want to be an AI leader and you want to scale your AI applications, you need to have the trust built in. And that is something the customers have to take ownership to implement that. Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we talked about how AI got started. We talked about use cases. We just talked about governance. Let's talk about people and teams. So, building a team that can actually deploy AI solutions, versus just build prototypes. I got to believe it's harder than it sounds. What makes a good team and maybe a not so good team?
I'll tell you with AI, and this is a specific problem with technology that's moving as fast as AI, is you set up a fantastic team and then they constantly struggle with the learning curve. They are constantly learning.
That's true with Microsoft
Right?
too.
You are I think on a different scale altogether.
We are constantly learning every day. Yeah.
Right? It's a constant learning journey. So my focus on AI teams especially is how can I reduce that learning curve? Anything that might now you guys have come up, I say you guys, Microsoft has come up with fantastic AI foundries and data IQs and great products. To learn it, maybe my team is going to take 6 months, 8 months to try out, test out, there's a process to it. And so what I like to do is crush that time by infusing some catalyst in there, which is in form of vendor partners or consultants. Come build this little thing for us, right? We know what the scope is. We generally know what the technology is supposed to do, so they are hopefully not the Pringle case. But you map them with your own employees, and now suddenly in 1 month you get them a crash course, you build a product, and then the consultants can go away. Now you are here already, which would have taken you 8 months to be there. So I think the focus is always value creation. No matter how big or small or how much time, it doesn't matter your team is, it's always how quickly you can get to the value, and that's the focus. So that's one of the tricks I use for AI, team building.
All right. I think another part of the teaming people kind of dynamic is adoption. So Brandel, in your organization, getting an organization to adopt something that's built and become effective at it, how has that worked and maybe how has it not worked?
So there's a couple ways you can approach it. We've heard of champions of change. Apurva mentioned value creation. You mentioned center of excellence. I work for a candy company. It's called Sticky Fingers, okay? Sticky fingers. The more sticky fingers are making the product, the more sticky fingers, then you're sticky. And you go around and you touch other things and the stickiness goes everywhere, right? Sticky fingers. So that's what you guys are gonna leave here is sticky fingers. And what I mean is, the more people you can get involved in an AI project, the more people that are baking, the more people that are developing the recipes, handing you the sugar, handing you the measuring cup, you've already built your center of excellence. You've already created that value. They're a part of it. They have sticky fingers. And when they have sticky fingers, other people are going to have sticky fingers. And they're going to talk about their sticky fingers when they're licking the chocolate off their sticky fingers. So for me, it's all about if you can get more people involved, your stakeholders, your subject matter experts, your business professionals, especially the ones that talk behind everyone else's back. You know the ones, you all thought of someone right there, right? Get them involved in that AI project. They'll get sticky fingers, and then those sticky fingers will spread. If you can create something where a lot of people have had their hands in it and have sticky fingers, I'm going to keep saying that until you guys leave with that in your mind. If you can create something like that that also brings value, makes jobs easier, makes people be able to complete processes, work quicker and faster, the value creation is there. You already have champions of change. It's just a matter of getting their fingers sticky. Where it fails is where you're in a silo. You're in a silo, you're baking the recipe all on your own, you're in the corner, you're doing the AI project, and then you're releasing it. That's where we get the AI is going to take over the world. I'm going to lose my job to AI, right? Because they can't see. They don't know the sugar and the ingredients and the stuff that went into the recipe, right? They don't know how useful it is, and they're not going to know because they don't have sticky fingers. So that's my advice is
all right.
Get as many people sticky fingers as you can, and then make sure it creates value.
Well, from personal experience, I can tell you that if you eat the M&Ms fast enough, you don't get sticky fingers. So. All right, so let's look ahead. You know, what's next? Agents, agentic AI, deeper adoption, new use cases, stuff that John Thompson talked about this morning. Sudha, what are you seeing right now with your team out there?
Yeah, that's a great question, and where we are heading right now is, at least from Microsoft point of view, is a frontier firm. So this is coming out of the Microsoft 2025 Work Trend Index. This is a research that we do. And it is basically saying that the firms or the organizations that are not just working with AI as simply like participating in their, assisting in their chatbots or something like that, but instead like really participating in their workflows, being part of their work. And that is what a frontier firm is all about. And that's what we are advocating our customers, to move from just simple chatbots to go and be a frontier firm. And this is coming basically from 3 radical shifts, like basically intelligence on tap. That's what we call as like digital employees that you can add to your teams because you have models that can do a lot of the expertise that you want, like basically reasoning, analysis, even a subject matter expertise can be got from a model. And the second thing that you can do is human and agent teams, because now you have agents that can do a lot of your work, and you can have a human agent team. And the third is every employee becomes an agent boss. Like, I know this looks like very drastic, but it is true, because even for me today, if I translate to what I do today, I have a facilitator agent. Like, these are all the Microsoft agents that I personally use. Sales agent, I have basically a know your customer agent. There are tons of agents that Microsoft has that I actually use every single day to get my job done. Even so, your workflow becomes me and the agents, so that I don't calibrate those agents. Those are out of the box agents for me. But imagine if you're owning a work process that you own, and you know these agents are doing this work for you, you become the owner of it. You become the boss of it, because you want to know whether the agent is doing the right things to make it happen, right? So this is the concept that we are driving with the customers, to elevate their thinking and look at how to move towards the frontier firm concept.
Okay. Perfect.
I love both there. So I guess we are getting sticky fingers, and we are giving everybody, we are making everybody a boss.
Sorry, yeah. Yes. You're making everybody a frontier.
Yes.
Say that, a frontier firm.
Frontier firm.
Yeah.
Love it. And again, this is a theme, I guess, is, AI is so democratized lately. Why would you not put it in your employees' hands, right? And so that's exactly what we are doing at TI Automotive. We got Microsoft Copilots, we got enterprise ChatGPT for people to leverage and really create or democratize innovation. Because you give people the tools, and the creativity blossoms, and wonderful things come out of it. We are already seeing this happen. One thing I'll mention though is not everybody is in technology or has technology expertise or has comfort with technology. So even as something as simple as ChatGPT, you know, I call it like a technology hump. It's a mental hump that people cannot go through. They feel, oh my God, this is so overwhelming for me. What do I even ask a ChatGPT? How do I even go about it? And this is a serious problem in manufacturing, especially, or anywhere which is non-technology. And so we hosted a lot of training sessions, almost flavor of lunch and learns. They're not quite during lunch, but you get the picture, right? So we created an agenda for them to really take them through that technology hump and now run fast, right? And we are seeing literally the first few months or weeks we introduced this enterprise ChatGPT to people. Adoption was like yay here. And moment we started these sessions to guide them through this, it shot up. And we were seeing all the responses from people and then engagement started. So do not underestimate how difficult it is for other people, non-technologists, to adopt a technology. So take them through that technology hump.
Great. What's the next step for Mars?
Yeah, so for us, we've got some of the AI adoption. We've got a lot of really nice, innovative products out there. For us, it's more about governance. So we wrote governance models. We have the direction. We have the policies. Is it fitting? Is it fitting for what we've already released? So an example was Claude, as most of you know, had a big release, what was it, about a month back, right? We weren't ready for that. We were not ready for that at all. And so that was where we had to go back and say, okay, well now we have to retest, revalidate, remake sure everything is okay in our AI models to make sure that our governance actually aligns with reality. So you develop these governance models thinking that this is the end all and this is a great foundation for AI, and then AI happens, and now you have to go back and reset and make sure that those foundations actually exist. That's where we're at now. So we're not necessarily jumping forward into more AI. We're proving that the AI we have is governed, is controlled, and is meeting the needs of our business.
Okay. All right, well, before we go to Q&A, just want to make one observation. So we have 3 ladies on our stage here today, and an all-woman panel. I think it'd be really interesting for our crowd to hear what your journey has been, and what would you recommend to the next group of women that want to become leaders.
I'll start. So one of the things I wanted to get across, I know we're all technology leaders in AI, but one of the things I'm hoping that you guys can spread the awareness in the news is the amount of valuable resources out there for AI training and adoption is huge, and most of them are free. There are a lot of courses and universities offering master's degree programs and different things you can travel all over and pay for, but YouTube, Google, they offer free courses, an extensive library. LinkedIn Learning, I think it's $20 a month. Again, extensive library of things where you can learn. And there's so many free tiers in AI where you can go in and start developing tools that I think that awareness needs to be spread more, because that's the open door. This is a frontier right now where AI is new for everyone. None of us were talking AI 10 years ago in this room, right? Some of us may have only been talking about it in the last couple of years. So we have an opportunity now where there's a frontier, and whoever runs the fastest wins, right? And we've got all the free tools to run. So encourage people, especially younger generations, to go out there and explore those tools, because you now have an opportunity to outpace people that have been in the industry, outpace executives and leaders that are just now dabbling in it. You can outpace them if you have the willingness and the desire. And I think that's what makes AI so exciting to me, is you can make your own journey, and it doesn't matter where you are in your career. It's an open frontier. So that's my biggest takeaway.
Growth mindset, right? That's what you have to ride and be. For me, since you said women, I see a lot of women here, so I would say that nothing falls in lap. You have to ask for what you want, because people don't know what you want, and so you have to verbalize it and ask for it. And many a times, if you are asking for it, it's probably an area which is uncomfortable. And so it's okay. I mean, you know, women generally, oh, I have to be 100% and only then can I apply for that job. Or whereas men, you know, even if they are at 40%, they'll do the application and they'll go through it, and then, you know, and this is a real difference between us, isn't it? And so I would encourage strongly, never underestimate yourself, ask for what you want, and don't be uncomfortable in uncomfortable situations. You know, try to be comfortable in those, and that's how you grow, really.
Yeah, that's awesome. I totally resonate with both of you. I think since you're asking for like a little bit of a personal journey, and maybe I'm the oldest in this group as well, and I see so many women here. I'm so overwhelmed to see that. I'm happy that women are coming out. So I think my view is this, like, curiosity is super important. If you're going to be in tech, the tech is your career, because tech is ever changing. And even before AI came, it was still ever changing. Like new technologies, we have seen cloud, we have seen drones, we have seen everything, and you have to be on top of it. Like, what do you need to do? So curiosity is super important. Totally resonate with what Apurva is saying. Is how the women operate in their brain, at least probably my generation women, maybe the younger generations are much better, is like you have to be 100% to go into something. So I think that 100% feeling, maybe you cannot completely offset it, but when you have the curiosity, you will learn, you will be relevant, and that will build your confidence to say, like, I know something about it. I think I know 80%, I still can go, you know, that is important. The other thing I would say is grit, because I think the tech career is never linear. I mean, I think most of the careers are never linear, but I think tech careers are even worse because you don't even know which project you're working on, if this project will ever like help me get promoted, or is this skills relevant? Am I going to be in the market? Like, you know, there's so many things that come to play. My personal experience is I moved to AI when it was not cool. It was 10 years ago I moved and switched to AI. At the time I was thinking, my manager actually called me and said, like, hey, next year you're not meeting your numbers. I work for Accenture, by the way. You may be losing your job because there's nothing you're doing, really. And I said, like, no, I want to stick with AI. I like it. It's cool. Whether it goes or not, I'll figure it out, right? Like, you know, sometimes, and the amount of, like, I can say dead years, like 4 or 5 years that I didn't do anything in my career maybe. But when I look back now, like, you know, I feel so much like, oh, I'm in the surreal moment of AI right now. So sometimes you will have some dead years. You just need to be confident about what you're doing and understand that it's not a linear career and keep working at it. And that's when, you know, I think you can have a little bit long sustained career. So yeah. That's my personal experience.
Yeah, I would say for all the people that I interview on an annual basis, the number one thing for me is how intellectually curious is this person?
Yes.
No matter how old they are, where they're at in their career, are you curious? I can use it. If you're not, I probably can't.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so we have timed this pretty well for a few questions. If anybody has any questions for the panel. You're the fastest, so you get the first question.
I guess oh, that's kind of loud. The conversation you guys were having about your AI COEs and your standards that you're building in, I'm just curious, two-pronged, what is the granularity that you're applying those standards at? And you guys made a comment about reacting to a Claude update that wasn't expected. And so when it comes to, I'm building this thing, is it at the level of, if I'm doing this task, like a planning task, you should use a larger, Opus 4.6 type model, or if you're doing a, a vector search, you should use this vector search system, or is it kind of higher level? And then based off of that answer, how are you guys evolving on those standards over time?
So I think, tell me if I didn't understand your question right, okay? But I think you're asking how does the AI COE come to the conclusion that we have to use a certain technology versus other. Is that the question?
Yes.
Right. So AI COE, which I did not mention, thank you for bringing that up. AI COE is always backed by a small group of people who are constantly experimenting. So that's their backbone. I said architecture, but that's what architecture really does, isn't it? So back at Autodesk, we were looking at a bunch of different vector databases, and we did not have a dedicated team who would run these tests. So what we did is, there were 3-4 teams out of 150, which eventually we went to, who were doing similar RAG programming. And so we split the different top databases, AI vector databases amongst them, and then we compared notes. So for a while we had to do that, which LLM is better, which LLM is better at what? And this was 3 or so years ago when things were just kicking off. So you have experimentation is extremely critical to come to the conclusion that something is fast, delivery fast, and then cost effective, and then it's good enough. Right, so there has to be some backbone there.
Of like an ongoing activity, like the
It's
experiment.
always ongoing with AI because something is new always, right? And if you don't have a dedicated team, have your whatever resources you have at your convenience, have split the burden and then compare notes.
Thank you.
Over there.
So on the topic of AI governance, risk and compliance partners, how did you incorporate them into the process? How do you manage their kind of review? Because again, you could see that being it's trending towards either being really onerous or really detached, depending on kind of what kind of industry you're in. So how do you navigate that balance of making sure that the legal and compliance folks are on board without blocking every project for 3 months?
Did you catch the question?
Yeah. So the question generally is just how are you managing risk with vendors, right?
It's more like how do you manage internal stakeholders who worry about risk with end vendors?
Yeah, so for us specifically, we have an entire process around risk evaluation for vendors and new partners. And so they go through a vigorous process where we're asking questions, we're asking for resources, documentation, their appendices, we're reading into their contracts, and we're doing all that. And then we're giving them a risk score. And that risk score is in several different categories. And depending on what the category is and where it is, can we mitigate it? Can we transfer the risk? Can we do that basic risk profiling? And then we end up with a risk profile for that vendor or for that partner. From there, it's getting your stakeholders involved. So we've got projects where we may have went with a more flashy vendor, even though the risk was higher, because we wanted a quicker output. And we took that risk and we took that gamble, and maybe it didn't pay off, right? And so it's getting those stakeholders on board with, hey, here's our risk assessment and here's their risk score. If you want to move forward, we can move forward. If not, we need to look for someone alternative. And then alternative may cost more, and it may take longer. So it's balancing what are the needs of your business and what are the needs of your stakeholder and what's your risk appetite.
I think we had one over there. Yep.
How do you make sure that any AI ML model you are designing is impacting the business KPIs or giving context to that rather than just being a technical experimentation to learn AI?
I can give a little bit of insight onto what we do in Microsoft and maybe practically how it's implemented. The others can answer. At least from Microsoft, this is a big question, right? Like everybody comes like, oh, how do I know what ROI I'm going to get with this use case? So what we do is we really have an envisioning session where we ask the businesses to bring in all the use cases, and we provide them workshops to, of course, you need to bring your data. We don't know what ROIs are important for you, what are the metrics and things that you have to look at, but we offer a service to make it happen. Like, we have like a customer business outcomes workshop where we look at all the ROIs and calculate them. It's almost like a management consulting type of a workshop that we offer for the customers to do that.
For me, AI, or not AI, right? AI is a solution to a problem, and I would treat it like any other software program you're running, and start with vetting the business case and outcomes of it, really, right? So AI should not cloud our process one way or another. It's same, it's a solution, right? And we have to, where it becomes a problem, really, you talked about experimentation versus, we need both. If we IT people are not experimenting, we are not getting the newest technology into our ecosystem. We don't know what to get in, right? And so I think that I personally like to keep 10% of my team's capacity on experimentation, whatever way you are working, right? In sprints or quarterly or whatever that process is. Keep some capacity dedicated to experimentation. And so, so that moves the needle, right? And then when you are at a place where, and I'll tell you, we are doing data IQ right now from Microsoft, which reads your data from database, and you can have conversations on, what are my sales numbers this year? You don't have access, sorry. Or here's the numbers, you have access. How cool will that be if people, business folks who have never known how to write an SQL query could talk to your data? That's an experiment we are going to, and again, I'm bringing in consultants to ramp up our learning time on this, but that's the output I want. Let's see with experimentation, is it going to happen or not? And if so, now there are a whole bunch of things you have to do, like put a metadata around your data products, right? It's not going to know by itself. You have a good naming convention, so model, it's intuitive to the model what you have in those tables, stuff like that. And now this is, again, becomes software program now, where you're doing all these things because you have experimented on it already. Now you're productionizing it with more money, right? So that would be my 2 cents.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. Front row.
All right, so as a follow-up to that other question, I guess my question is, do you have any recommended ways to communicate just what is the enterprise value of using AI? Have you been asked that yet? And have you had to try to derive some sort of true measurement?
Absolutely, and I'll give the same answer, right? Whether AI or not, you're always asked that question. What is the value this program is bringing to the company? And so you want to tie it, the best thing you can do, and it happens is data too. Why are you building so much data? Thankfully, none of my companies have asked me this question, but if they do, you can build a story there that, okay, now we are working on these tariffs. We are working on tariffs. Maybe half the room here is working on tariff problem and data to obtain that proof of tariff that you can reimburse from your customers. It's time bound. The customers say, give me, I will not reimburse you the money you paid on the tariff on this product unless you give me a proof of it. And building that proof manually takes certain time. And so that's your story there, that my data products are going to expedite that, and I'm going to give you millions of dollars in reimbursements, which is lost to the company. So you always, I think data and AI folks have to be so creative in storytelling, and that it's just something you have to do.
I'll also add a few more things to that, like, just from the product standpoint, we always are asked, like, okay, if you're using M365 Copilot, like, how do I know it's increasing the productivity of my employee? Like, that's, I mean, although we do that traditionally for every AI project or every IT project per se, but AI is a little bit of a gray area, if you will, because you cannot quite completely sometimes measure exactly, okay, I'm augmenting my developers with some coding assistant. Like, how do I know, like, operationally I'm reducing the number of coders and I'm moving them to basically maybe an architect or something, right? Like, so there are a lot of studies that is happening in that area. I mean, we have like evaluation frameworks, value frameworks, at least for the Microsoft tools that we provide to the customer, on what is the exact value you are deriving in terms of productivity measures. And that will translate to like hours to, you know, the dollars. That makes sense. But that's still a very evolving category of value measurement, I should say. I mean, it's definitely, as she said, it's a creative area that we got to look at. Yeah.
Okay, so are we good?
You have some.
No, we can move on.
Okay. Well, I think that's a wrap. So I want to thank my panel, Brandel, Apurva, Sudha. Big round of applause.
Thank you.